Everest Chapter 7. The cuts brought a change in the atmosphere at the summit complex. When the Everest hopefuls had been 20 in number, the final team seemed very remote. Now they were 10, vying for 4 spots, and even though the top place was being held for Ethan Zaff, the odds were improving. The candidates could almost feel their crampons biting into the blue ice of Everest glaciers. The biggest prize in mountaineering was slowly coming within reach. A new sport was born, one that was almost as popular as climbing, figuring the Cameron Mackey was an expert at it. Z-Man takes the number 1 spot. Chris gets number 2. That's pretty definite. And one of the girls, put in Dominic. There were 3 left. Bryn, mused Cameron. Then again, you can't write off Sammy. She's crazy, but she's good. Dominic did the math. That leaves only 1 spot for the rest of us. Probably Tilt. Tilt's too dumb, Cameron said seriously. He'll give Cap a wedgie and get himself cut, so depending on the Perry factor, if I keep my nose clean, maybe I can sneak in the back door. The Perry factor was a question of why Perry was still standing after much stronger climbers had been packed off to the airport. Maybe Cap thinks I'm good, was Perry's explanation. Maybe you guys are wrong about me, but he didn't sound convincing. Maybe Cap's your rich uncle, sneered Tilt. Perry said nothing. He had often thought of having a different uncle, but in his imagination it was always a non-climber who thought it was Himalayan was a chain of donut shops. It's getting weird, Bryn admitted to Sneezy in an on-camera interview for the website. Normally, climbers are the friendliest people on the planet. You take 6 total strangers, scaling El Captain, and by lunch you've got 6 best buddies. Here you want to be nice to people, but part of you says that if they do, well, it could cost you your chance. Nowhere was that more true with Bryn and Sammy. Both were convinced that one of the females would advance to the final team. So their competition, they felt, was solely between them and the other girl, who wasn't really a threat. Their friendship cooled, and they weren't enemies, but they became afraid to trust each other. Tombstone 4 was a black crag, and not enormous, but steep and awkwardly shaped. The toughest piece of technical mountaineering the candidates had tackled so far. The route required them to get over a rocky spur called the Club, where while they were climbing up the underside, they would be hanging exposed over a 100-foot drop. Extreme, breathed Sammy reverently. I'm really starting to hate that word, groaned Bryn. Bryn inserted a spring-loaded cam in a crack on the bottom of the spur and watched the unit expand to secure the protection point. Sammy passed a rope through the ring and then wiggled out to place a second piece of hardware. But as she tried to scramble around the top, the tangle of lines imprisoned her ankle. Bryn climbed out and reached to free her partner's leg and froze. High up the crag, the 2 girls' eyes locked, and the message passed between them as if by radar. If you leave here and go for help, Cap could cut you for a beginner's mistake, and then you've got a guaranteed spot on the team. That moment was over as quickly as it had unfolded. Bryn broke out of her inaction and undid the snarl of rope between Sammy's ankle. The 2 clambered atop the club and rested, eyeing each other suspiciously. Was that what I think it was? Panted Sammy. And Bryn could only shrug miserably. Helping a fellow climber should be as automatic as response as a dog chasing a stick. What was this competition doing to them? This is bogus, Sammy complained to Dominic that night. No mountain is worth it. This one is, Dominic said simply. He couldn't help noticing that as the fellow climbers became cagier with one another, they were growing more open with him. That meant no one, not even his own brother, felt he had a shot at making the team. Dominic himself didn't really expect to last much longer. The cold air of the Rockies was rife with competition. 6-hour workouts now took 5. Everything was speeding up as the candidates competed for Cap Zero's attention. Even leisure time was turning into a tournament. Bouldering after lunch had become an extension of boot camp, despite the fact that Ciro and his guides weren't even watching. It was now a full-blown obsession. Dominic scrambled up a 20-foot rock, scanning for handholds the way a chess master seeks out weakness in an opponent's defense. On the other side of a craggy diorite outcropping, Tilt raced against him with strong, steady moves. Dominic couldn't see his adversary, but he had a good idea of his progress because Tilt climbed with his mouth as much as he did with his hands and feet. Getting tired, Shrimp? You can't beat me. If you're looking for the top, just follow the soles of my boots. Tilt Crowley, Perry said with a sigh, watching from below, the only climber who uses trash talk. In a mammoth burst of energy, Tilt scrambled to the crown of the boulder and stood there, beating his chest and howling like Tarzan. From below, Dominic sneaked out a hand and began to feel for a handhold on the top. Tilt stuck out his boot and applied gentle pressure to the searching fingers. No way, Shrimp. This is my rock. Dominic gave no answer, but it was not his nature to retreat. The boot pushed a little harder. Geez, Tilt, coaxed Perry, looking up at the two. Leave him alone. Tilt nodded. As soon as he gives, the foot bore down. Dominic gritted his teeth against the pain. Because of the angle of the rock, he couldn't see his tormentor, but he could picture Tilt's expression of nasty triumph. It made him more determined than ever to hang on. Perry searched the group and spotted Chris. He caught the older boy's attention and redirected it with a nod to the standoff atop the bouldering. Chris lopped over. Come on, Tilt, let him up. No chance, said Tilt. My summit, my record. What are you talking about? Asked Perry. Half the kids have been up that thing. I'm the youngest, and that's what counts, Tilt said stubbornly. The Shrimp's younger than me, so he's not going. Is that how it's going to be on Everest, too? Challenged Chris. A derisive snort. No one's taking this run to Everest. Now Tilt was leaning on the fingers. Dominic saw stars. Chris established one handhold and one foothold. If I have to come up there, your descent is going to be fast and head first. You think? Tilt snarled defiantly. Todd Messner came running down the path, waving a copy of the National Daily. Hey guys, check it out. We're in the paper. Tilt stepped off Dominic's hand. You're lucky, Shrimp. My public awaits. He climbed effortlessly down and joined the crowds and Todd. The article was a double-page spread in the sports section under the headline, From Day Camp to Base Camp. In a few weeks, the youngest expedition ever will set out for the world's highest mountain. But will their adolescent hang-ups prove to be a bigger obstacle than Everest? Hey, wait a minute, began Chris in protest. The article was very different from the kind of information Sneezy was posting on their website. It said almost nothing about the Summit Quest training or the upcoming climb. Instead, it was written like a reality TV episode, focusing on personal habits, embarrassing details, and petty squabbles. And the general tone of it seemed to be, how can these kids form a team to survive the death zone when they can't even agree who gets to use the bathroom first? Hey, that only happened once, exclaimed Perry. Chris's face was carved from stone. There's no way they could know this stuff about us. Somehow, the National Daily Reporter had found out that Bryn's parents were filing for divorce, and the argument over sending their daughter to Everest had been the final blow to a shaky marriage. It was also stated that Chris was in academic probation at school, and the expedition would probably cost him a year. The fact that Sammy was emailing her boyfriend back home was blown out of proportion. According to the article, every other sentence out of her mouth was Caleb did this or Caleb said that. The gutsy, in-your-face athlete came across as a love-struck ditz. It went on. Cameron was on the phone, contact with his psychiatrist. Tilt was unpopular, Perry wasn't very good, Dominic was too young and skinny, and Cap Zero, famous alpinist guide, was an inflexible bully who lived by the adage, my way or no way. I don't get it, explained Todd. I mean, it's all true, but how did they find out? Obviously, said Chris, there's a rat around here. The question is, who? Tilt shrugged. Simple. One of the guys who washed out and got mad and squealed to the newspaper. It's no big deal. That's easy for you to say, put in Todd. You're just unpopular, but Sammy's going to have a heart attack when she sees this. Not to mention Cap, added Perry. Cap's a big boy, put in Chris. Cap's a big jerk, Tilt amended. But he's used to the media. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted Dominic sitting cross-legged atop the mass of diorite. The younger boy's face radiated with defiance. Your brother's spooky, Tilt informed Chris. Tell me something I don't know. Bryn sprinted through the trees, all breathless excitement. Sammy's found a monster problem down in the valley. In bouldering, a problem was a large technical difficulty rock. Climbing it was referred to as solving. They all raced after Bryn, including Dominic, who had rushed to catch up after descending the distributed boulder. In a broad valley, almost hidden by a grove of pines, stood the ultimate rock formation. It was 3 stories high and resembled a mammoth mushroom sitting atop a lopsided pedestal. As I watched Sammy Moon scramble up on the base and began to work her way onto the stem of the mushroom. Perry waved. Way to go, Sammy! Shh! The others glared him into silence. No true climber would ever distract a fellow alpinist who was in the middle of taking on a tough problem. Sammy reached the ceiling and clung there, in a shadow of an enormous slab that made up the mushroom crown. It stretched at least 7 feet around her in all directions. She reached up and ran her hand over the smooth limestone. She managed to get a finger lock in a small fissure and hung 25 feet above them, searching for another hold, but there was nothing. She paused for a moment, taking stock, then began to sway back and forth in an effort to swing her legs over the edge of the mushroom and find purchase on the top. Don't do it, urged Chris under his breath. Of course she'll do it, whispered Tilt. Somebody get a mop! But Sammy didn't like her chances and pulled her lithe body back to the stem for a descent. Tilt passed her on the way up. Not every extreme, he commented cheerfully. You won't make it either, she promised, tight-lipped. She was right. First Tilt, then Bryn, then Todd were unable to get to the top of the mushroom. Chris, who was the tallest, managed to get a foot over the edge of the crown, but couldn't find anything to latch onto up there and had to retreat. Dominic had the least success of all. His reach was too short to make it to the first finger lock, so he never got off the stem. Cameron was smiling as he dipped his hands into the bag of chalk. Watch, he grinned, and take notes. He had noticed a different hold, this one closer to the edge. The fissure was even narrower, but he succeeded in hooking 2 fingers into it. There was no warning. A small shower of dust rained down at the same time, and the handhold crumbled.